Hi everybody, I'm Christopher Lowell. Now in my last podcast called Introvert, I talked about how social media turned what was once considered a very silent majority into the most powerful collective voice for positive change the world will probably ever know. A force that will finally help redefine what quality of life will actually look like. It's so exciting. It's not just social media that's given over half the population's introverts a brand new center of influence and voice. It's actually the very medium itself that will, for the first time, explain what prognosticators and sages and artists and philosophers and futurists have tried but failed to communicate for hundreds of years. Oh, it's not that they didn't have the right concept or anything. It's just that up until now, they didn't have a universal language in which to present it like we do now. You see, the very computer or PDA that you're probably on right now, that you log on to every day, has, in a very brief time, allowed even the most tech-challenged to interface with the most intuitive technology on the planet. Of course, there was a learning curve, and I'm sure if you were like me, you probably got lost in the bowels of cyberspace, but then you learned a little bit more. You probably signed up for stuff you didn't want. Until you got a little bit better at distinguishing the cyber con artist from the true artist. Nevertheless, you figured out how to use a search engine, even though I don't think any of us are still quite sure how it actually works. You learned how to control the mouse and the keypad so that you could cut and paste and block and friend and download apps and, well, effectively connect to the entire world who would learn to do the same thing. In fact, I think all of us today would have had probably a heart attack if it all suddenly disappeared. But you know, there was a time when we didn't trust this technology at all. We did not trust what has now become second nature and systemic in our everyday lives. Do you know what a hard sell the first laptop was? Oh my. In those days, the public perception was the bigger the computer, the more trustworthy. I know, right? But we soon learned that in fact bigger was not better and that more components simply caused more stress. Well, if you look at our recent attitudes towards lifestyle, you'll actually see the same pattern. In the last 3 years, for the majority of us, big is no longer better, and more stuff, we've learned, equates to more stress. But the parallels don't stop there. The reason why an entire planet adapted so quickly to portable devices in only a time span of 3 short years is because the technology was so amazingly intuitive. Well, it should be, because it was designed by us to parallel our instinctive behavior. Yeah, that's right. See, we tend to think of like 20 geeks in cubicles coding numbers, but in fact, before they could even begin doing their jobs, some of the world's most brilliant minds, a consortium of leading artists and visionaries and philosophers from all over the globe, had a hand in developing the very technology you now take for granted. The reason why it works so seamlessly is that they understood the human creative process. They understood that it was our innate creativity that bound us together, even though we ourselves didn't even know it. They understood that creativity often defies logic, and that much of what we do that employs individual creativity every day is far more automatic than we'd ever suspected. They understood that creativity was the universal language, not the math. If that were the case, only a handful of people would ever be able to use the technology they set out to create. And in fact, at the start, only engineers could use it. Even the language they use appealed to our natural human characteristics. They didn't call it Primary Program 614 Interface. They simply called it preference. Those who would build the databases, they didn't call their browsers Mega Info Retrieval Code Analyzer Interfaces. No. They named them things like Bing, Safari, Explorer, Google. They understood that if we overthought anything they created, it wouldn't work. Which is why, even today, about 14% of laptop users still prefer keyboards and still carry Blackberries. Look, there will always be those who can't shut their minds off long enough to go with the natural human rhythm and flow of the creativity we all possess. Oh, I can hear those eyeballs rolling. I'm not creative. Sorry. If you're listening to this podcast, honey, you are. You just confuse creativity, possessed by all, with talent, possessed by, let's face it, relatively few. Nevertheless, every human on the planet, without exception, comes here with it. Without it, we couldn't survive. It's stamped into our internal motherboard as the most important part of the human programming. The fact that we ignore it or let it run on automatic pilot, relegating it to doing stupid stuff like driving a car, getting dressed, and feeding ourselves, has nothing to do with the power of this extraordinary program. And by the way, it is completely accessible, just like a download. You just forgot the password. Creativity is the skeleton key that unlocks the preferences of who we individually are, just as the discovery of DNA has unlocked how we really function. And it's through the daily use of this amazing intuitive technology that we log on to every day that will finally help us all understand what creativity is, how it really works. Very exciting. This is a bigger subject, so I will continue this conversation in the following podcast, What is Creativity? As always, for more, either go to RightSizeUp.com, or if it's easier to remember, log on to ChristopherLowell.com and click on the Right Side Up masthead. And I am Christopher Lowell, and goodbye for now.